and welcome to At America, the U.S. Embassy's American Center. My name is Hasna Rohani. I am one of the guests here at America, and now you're watching At America podcast, Bridging Cultures, American Connections with Indonesia. May marks the beginning of AANHPI Heritage Month. Join us in celebrating the month through an insightful podcast with AANHPI diplomats as we embrace the diverse cultures of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And now, without any further ado, allow me to pass the mic to our one of podcasters today. She is news anchor of See Today. Over to you, Aline Wiratmaja.
Thank you, Hasna, for the introduction, and welcome again to Podcast at America, Bridging Cultures, American Connections with Indonesia. As being mentioned by Hasna, we are celebrating Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders Heritage Month, as well as commemorating 75 years of domestic relations between the United States of America and Indonesia. And we are so happy at America today. We are also joined by university students from UHAMKA University. Yay! Thank you for coming, guys. And we are very delighted to be joined today by two Asian American diplomats at the U.S. Embassy Jakarta. I will introduce the two of our speakers today. The first one is Canby, Vice Consul at the U.S. Embassy Jakarta. Hi, welcome to the podcast. And I will read out the short bio of Amy. She is former Environment Science, Technology, and Health Officer at the U.S. Mission to ASEAN, Jakarta, former Assistant Cultural Affairs Officer, U.S. Embassy Bangkok and Panama City, former Outreach Coordinator at the U.S. Embassy Pretoria, former Lecturer Literature and Writing in Washington, D.C. and New Delhi, India, proud Burmese American who grew up in the United States, Thailand, and the Republic of Korea. She obtained BA from the University of Dallas, and she speaks Burmese and Thai and studied Bahasa Indonesia at the Foreign Service Institute. Hi, Amy. Thank you once again for joining us today. Can you speak a little
Ya,
bit
bisa.
of
Terima
Bahasa?
kasih banyak. Selamat sore semuanya. Ya, ya, saya senang sekali untuk berbicara dengan semuanya. Ya, terima kasih.
Iya, kami juga senang bisa ngobrol bareng Amy dan nanti juga kita akan invite teman-teman semua yang gabung di sosial media kita lewat Instagram, YouTube, ataupun juga yang hadir di sini untuk bisa tanya ya, just scan the QR code that will be available and we have like 20 minutes for interactions. You can ask questions to our speakers today. And other than Amy Canby, we also have Jacob Rath, Financial Management Officer of USAID. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Hi, Aline. Good. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. So I will read out his short bio as well. He works as Financial Management Officer at USAID Indonesia since 2021. And he obtained bachelor's and master's degrees from James Madison University in Virginia, USA. And he was former finance officer at the IMF, International Monetary Fund, former auditor at Grant Thornton. And he grew up in a foreign service family, lived in Jakarta twice as an embassy dependent, and he speaks Indonesian and some Portuguese as well as a bit of Sundanese, if I'm not mistaken, right?
A little bit, but I hope there's no test at the end of this. I will fail.
Not test, but maybe a word or two?
Sure, boleh. Selamat sore semua, apa kabar? Nama saya Jake. Saya berterima kasih sekali untuk kesempatan untuk hadir hari ini. As my friend Aline mentioned, I can speak a little bit of Bahasa Sunda, just a tiny bit. So if anybody wants to teach me any extra, please find me after and I'm happy to learn.
Yes, you can share your Sundanese knowledge to Jake too. And he is an Indonesian American, so good to have them here. Maybe we can call them as AA Jake and Amy. Okay, so first questions. So as we all know, we are celebrating the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. And I would like to ask for your point of view, Amy. How significant is HPI Heritage Month and its relevance, also the importance of understanding diverse cultures and fostering global connections.
Absolutely. Well, diversity is really important in American culture, and we are a country full of people with a lot of different and diverse heritages, similar to Indonesia, actually. So I think that months like the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month is really important for us to be able to spend a moment to recognize the different stories we have and the different strengths that we bring. And it's significant to me personally because it's my Asian identity is so important to me, and so I really welcome the opportunity to speak about that and how that has led to my following diplomacy in my career.
Yes, and you grew up in Thailand as well as in Korea. How that shaped you or your point of view?
I mean, I think in every possible way. So
Yes.
my mother's Burmese, but I grew up, my father was in the military, so I moved around a lot. And my aunt and uncle lived in Thailand, where my grandfather was in the United Nations, and that's where he retired. So I can't even imagine not seeing the world from an Asian perspective and also from an American perspective. So as I've gotten older, I've been able to really understand that there's real beauty in being able to see things from different points of view. I think that that's what makes a good diplomat. I think that's what makes really anybody good at business. Anybody that really wants to connect with people has to be able to see things from other points of view. So I think in every conceivable way, it's affected my life.
Yes, very beautiful. And now, Jake, what do you think about this, the significance of the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and also the importance of understanding the diversity in cultures and global connections?
Sure, Aline, and I think my colleague Amy really touched on some key points there that I agree with. As she mentioned, diversity is a key part of American culture because we really are such a diverse society. It really is a melting pot of different cultures, backgrounds, all walks of life. So to be able to celebrate that, and specifically myself as an Asian American, being able to celebrate that during this month is a great honor and opportunity.
Yes, and maybe you can share your personal stories about the connections with Indonesia.
Sure. So, part of my personal stories actually starts with my husband, who first came to Indonesia. Who's from a very small town in the U.S., in a place called West Virginia, which is very provincial. And he came as a Rotary scholar, and he came to Bali. He'd never been really that far away from home ever before. And he fell in love with Indonesia and has been coming here for the last 30 years. He speaks Indonesian and he speaks Balinese. And it's through his connection with your beautiful country and his connection with the friends he's made that are like family that I was introduced to Indonesia. So I've been coming since 2006, and I never actually came as a tourist in a pure way because I always stayed with friends and I always was able to understand how Indonesians connect, which is usually over food and over speaking and connecting with family members. So that felt very familiar and comfortable for me coming from an Asian background because that's how my family connects too. We don't really, when a Burmese person meets another person, they don't say, "How are you?" They say, "Have you eaten yet? Have you had rice?" That's the way we greet. I think Indonesians sometimes do that too. It's something you would always ask. So my connection with Indonesia is very long, and I'm so grateful to get to come as a diplomat and learn Indonesian language. It's been like a really powerful and deeper way for me to connect to the country.
Culinary connections.
Absolutely.
What are your favorite food?
My favorite
Indonesian
food. So I love sambal. I love sambal ijo. I love Balinese food. I think it's so good. What else? I like
How
almost
about
all food.
Padangese, nasi padang?
I like nasi padang. I like nasi campur. I like nasi goreng.
All kinds of rice.
Yes.
How about you, Jake? Can you tell us your personal story about connections with Indonesia?
Sure. As you mentioned, my dad was in the Foreign Service. He worked for the State Department, like my colleague Amy here. And as part of that lifestyle, we were posted 2 times in Jakarta. First time was from 93 to 95, and then the second time was from 2002 to 2006. So I did spend some years first as an infant and then as a middle schooler here in Jakarta. Apart from that, my mom is Indonesian. Dia orang Sunda asli Bandung. So from a young age, she taught me Bahasa Indonesia. Unfortunately, no Bahasa Sunda yet.
Not yet.
And she taught me a lot about Indonesian culture. So with that said, I feel like I have a long and very deep personal connection with Indonesia. And so as a result, that makes my work as a diplomat now, living here, that much more meaningful every day.
Yes. How would you recall your teenage years in Indonesia? 4 years you spent it right here in
Correct.
Indonesia as a middle schooler.
Yes, I spent a lot of time at PIM, Satu.
Anak Jaksel,
Yeah,
guys.
right. I was anak Jaksel back then. Spent a lot of time at PIM, hanging out with my cousins, spending a lot of quality time with family and friends here that I continue to remain in touch with today.
Yeah. Do you eat Sundanese food?
I do. I like karedok a lot. It's very fresh and refreshing. I also like apa ya? Can't think of any other Sudanese.
Batagor.
Batagor and somai, of course. Thank you for reminding me.
How about recent trend seblak and bakso aci? Have
Yes,
you tried?
I've tried sablak. It's interesting. I like it. It's a very unique dish.
It's very spicy, right?
Yes, a little
Have
bit.
you tried
No,
one?
I haven't. No, I haven't tried. I need
It's
to
like
try
a
it.
challenge right now, I think, because it's so hot and spicy.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay then. And talking about food, right, make us hungry a bit, I think. And we would like to explore as well deep connections to Indonesia. Maybe you have a story about involvement in cultural exchange program, language learning, or community engagement. I know Ami studied Bahasa Indonesia, right, at the Foreign Service, right? Maybe you can share us more about that.
Yeah, so prior to 2021, my husband speaks very, very good Indonesian, and I spoke 5 words of Indonesian. And so when I came back to Indonesia, speaking Indonesian, I felt like I could hear and see so much more. It was like living in full color. And I was actually speaking with Jake on the way over. I think Indonesia has given some words to the human lexicon that you should share. Words like ngobrol, ngopi. These are some of the best words I think ever invented. Ole ole. They convey cultural values, but they
Yes.
also help understand what's important, how people spend time. And we don't have an English equivalent to ngopi, not quite. So for me, the language is such a important way to understand and connect with people. And I'm still learning. I only speak a bit, but I'm still learning, and I'm really excited about it.
What were your first 5 Indonesian
Oh my gosh,
words?
really, like cantik, makan, anjing, kucing. But that was it. That was it. So I can speak a little bit more now. Thank goodness.
And how about you, Jake? Maybe you have stories about involvement with deeper connections to Indonesia, maybe other than spending your childhood and your teenage years in Indonesia.
Yeah, sure. I think one really formative experience I had was in 2013. I came to Jakarta for a summer and did an internship at Deloitte, a public accounting firm here in Central Jakarta. And that was just a really, really cool opportunity for me to kind of utilize my Bahasa Indonesia, my knowledge of the Indonesian communication style in a professional setting. And I got to learn a lot about accounting, which was my jurusan at the time.
Yes.
And it was just a really exciting experience because I had not much professional experience at that time. So as an intern in Indonesia, it was a really great experience to kind of understand how the Indonesian office culture works. And that's helped me a lot today in my current job too.
Yeah. What were your impressions about the office culture in Indonesia?
Sure. I think, and not only office culture, but in general, sopan santun is a concept that is very, very important to understand and practice in your everyday communication, whether that be with your family or friends or work colleagues or just people on the street. So as an intern, using sopan santun with my superiors and with my colleagues, my fellow interns, it was a great chance for me to practice that knowledge that I had been taught as a child about sopan santun.
Yes, Indonesia has so many informal words and slangs. Do you find it difficult the first time you learn about Bahasa Indonesia? Amy?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point. So they teach us a very formal Bahasa in our language school because they want us to speak formally. But learning like even Jaksel, everything is shortened, right? Everything is just learning that. I still have trouble reading text sometimes because everything is shortened, but it's fun also.
How about your experience, Jake?
I still continue to learn new words to this day. My office colleagues teach me the latest bahasa gaul. Last week I learned nobar, which means nonton bareng.
Nonton bareng.
Yeah. Apa lagi? That was the biggest one,
Yeah.
and I'm going to use it from now on because it's much easier than saying nonton bareng.
Yeah, we love to shorten words, right? Make it so like, if you just came to Indonesia, maybe you find it a bit difficult to understand because we love to shorten things. And then now, I would like to ask your experience as well, how these connections and experiences broaden your perspective and contributed to your personal and professional growth as well. And
I love what Jake is talking about, this idea of like politeness, because one thing that I really believe about Indonesian people and Indonesian culture is there's a really high value placed on group dynamics and on social cohesion and people getting along and respecting each other. And I work in an office, most of the embassy actually is an office made up of Americans and Indonesians working together. And my Indonesian colleagues are some of the most like polite, kindest, warmest people I've ever worked with. And so I really admire that because it's nice to work with people like that, but it also it teaches me too how you can get things done and work really, really hard, but also make sure that you're maintaining your connections with people. It's not just about the outcome, it's also about your connection. So that's something that in my Asian culture I learned. There's a high value in Burmese culture also on how you conduct yourself, how you represent your family in the outside world. So that is something that is deeply important to me, but I think Indonesia teaches me in a deeper way and in a different way too about that value.
yes. And how about you, Jake?
I agree with 100% with Amy. I do believe that Indonesians are among the friendliest people that I've had the fortune of interacting with.
Are we too friendly?
No, you can never be too friendly.
Because we love to ask questions that seems like personal, right?
Oh,
Maybe for different cultures.
This is namanya kepo ya.
Kepo,
Okay.
yeah, betul.
This is another word I learned since I moved here. Yeah, just as Amy said, being able to interact with your colleagues on a personal level, it goes a long way to show that you care about their personal life, their families, how they're doing. Since I've moved here, I've been to so many events of my Indonesian colleagues. I've been to colleagues' children's weddings, birthday parties, dinners, and unfortunately even funerals. And so that kind of personal note that you have to add to your working style here, that goes a long way.
Did you attend bukber too?
Yes, many bukbers.
Many bukbers. And after that, halal bihalal?
Yeah, I barely walked away from that. I was so full from the halal bihalal.
Can you tell us about your bukber experience, maybe?
Sure. One night, my aunt in Tangerang Selatan, she had a family reunion at her home, and so about 50 people from Jakarta, Garut, Bandung, they all came. She said it was for a lunch meeting, and people ended up staying until past midnight. And that Indonesian hospitality again really shone through. My aunt told people, including myself, "Oh, jangan pulang, don't go home yet. Sudah malam, bahaya, gelap." So that Indonesian hospitality is renowned around the world.
Oh, very nice. How about you, Amy? Did you join any bukber event?
I have before, but I've hosted them at my house. But yes, but only a few. I feel like I should go hang out with Jake. You seem like you're having all the fun.
Big family, right? Big
That's
family
right.
reunion. And this is random question from me. Like, have you ever watched Indonesian movie and can you enjoy it?
I love Indonesian movies. My favorites are Ada Apa Dengan Cinta.
Ooh.
I'm a huge Nicholas Saputra fan.
Same here.
Really? Okay.
Yes, we shorten him Nixap.
Mix up, that's
Yes.
right. And I didn't know that there was a sequel until, 6 months ago, so I watched that. And I have not yet watched the latest movie, Architecture of
Of
Love.
Love, yes.
I need to watch that because it looks really good.
Yeah, because the setting is in New York.
That's right, yes.
Yes, yes. How about you, Amy?
I have not, but I'm writing notes down about what my Netflix binge will be.
Yes, and there's also this funny movie, Agak Lain. I don't know whether you can enjoy that as well because it displays Bataknis cultures a lot in the movie.
I see. I haven't caught that one yet, but I've heard it's good.
Yes, yes. It's almost like, I think it's one of the best selling movies in recent days. So, and now, as being mentioned before, we are also celebrating the 75 years of diplomatic relations between the United States of America and Indonesia. Long history and connections between the two countries. And can you tell us your opinion or your POV, Amy, about the significance of commemorating the 75 years of diplomatic relations between the United States and Indonesia as a diplomat here in Indonesia?
Absolutely. I think it's an extremely exciting time to be here in Indonesia where the relationship is so alive and it's so vibrant. You know, we have the upgrade of the comprehensive strategic partnership. It's a really big word, but that means that our governments are working together to increase our security, increase our connectivity, and increase our economic cooperation. You know, your former President Jokowi, went to the U.S. to visit. We also have Indonesia was just the ASEAN president. So there's a lot of emphasis on the U.S.-Indonesian relationship. You know, in the consular section, we last year issued 100,000 visas, more visas than we've ever issued before. So this is a real indication that there's real growth happening in the relationship, and it's really important. But I'm really happy to be here with young people, because when I think about the relationship, I think about the future. And when we think about what makes a relationship, it's not just government to government, it's also people to people. So when I think about like all of those Indonesians going to the US, I'm hoping that some people listening in and some people sitting in the audience are thinking about where their place will be in the relationship, whether it's going to study in the US or going to go on a scholarship or going on an exchange program. Like the relationship is you too, you're part of it. So that's kind of my plug for the 75 years. Like, let's look at the next 75 years and what that's going to look like.
Yes, maybe you can elaborate more on the scholarships available because we have students here. Maybe they can apply for this scholarship
Yeah, I
as
highly
well.
recommend it. So this is university-age students, right? So we have the Waisili Scholarship, the Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative, and there are 5-week-long programs you can apply for. There's the Fulbright Scholarship, and those are just 2 that we have. So you can go to the U.S. Embassy website and take a look at the scholarships. And then we also have a really wonderful program called Education USA, and that's a program that helps students to apply for studying in the U.S. And it's a free program, and it's available in many centers, even in this center, I think is one of them, where you can learn about the application process and what it takes to get a scholarship either through the U.S. Embassy or through maybe even a U.S. institution.
Yes, give it a try, guys. And you mentioned that the U.S. Embassy has issued a record high of visa for Indonesian. Are most of them tourists or students?
I'd say it depends on the season, but for the most part, tourist. But we have a good number of student visas. We have a good number of people that are going on J1 visas, which are exchange visas, going to maybe do an internship in hospitality for a year. So there's lots of really interesting ways to go to the U.S. and gain some of that experience and some of that knowledge.
Yes, very valuable opportunities. And Jake, I would like to hear your opinion as well about the significance, the importance of commemorating 75 years of the diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Indonesia.
Sure. And like Amy said, I think it marks the fact that both countries are very committed to strong diplomatic ties. To answer that question, maybe from a USAID perspective, we do a lot of work with environmental conservation and protection, private sector development, public health, and transparency in the government. And so with that said, I think these are all great ways to continue to build trust and good relationships between the two countries moving forward for the next 75 years, as Amy mentioned.
Yes. And what are the key milestones and initiatives that have strengthened the bilateral relationship and promote mutual understanding between the two countries, Amy?
Well, I think the ones that I mentioned are the ones that we're really looking at as a hallmark. But as we go forward, I think you can look in any sector, and there's a major development. We have security cooperation, and we have economic cooperation. I think USAID is one of the most exciting areas of development because it's thinking about how do you safeguard the future.
Yeah, maybe you want to share about that, Jake?
Sure. Yeah. As to Amy's point, Indonesia is blessed to have such incredibly beautiful and vibrant and diverse environments. And so we do a lot of work with coral reef protection and conservation, protecting the rainforests, water sanitation. And so all that really meaningful work goes a long way into ensuring that there are strong diplomatic ties between Indonesia and the US, but it's also very meaningful in that the rest of the world can now enjoy some of the world's most unique and exciting natural assets.
Yeah, what are your hopes for the U.S. and Indonesia diplomatic relations in the future?
I hope for continued commitment by both countries, strong diplomatic ties, and from a development perspective, increased commitment from both countries to safeguarding the natural environments of Indonesia.
Yes, and how about you, Amy?
Yeah, I share the same hopes as Jake, and I also, I just hope that those connections continue. I'm looking at the audience members, and you guys are giving me such hope because I think that relationships it's not just something that's static. It's like any relationship. It's something that requires growth and attention and care, and people to be involved. And so, no matter what you're wanting to study, if you're interested in doing something like diplomacy or international relations, there's probably a place for you in the work ahead. Because it doesn't just happen, it takes a lot of really hard work and commitment. So I really encourage anybody listening and people in the audience, if this is interesting to you and you've heard anything that resonates with you, think a little bit about how you want to make a mark on diplomacy and foreign relations and what you want to contribute to the relationship, because it needs help, right? And it needs that energy coming from a young generation.
Yes, each of us can contribute, of course. Absolutely. And prior to this podcast, we talked, Jake, you were here at America before, right, to promote this internship opportunity that's available. Maybe you can share about that too?
Yeah, so the internship program is really exciting. When I last spoke about this at America, I learned myself that there were vacancies in literally every single agency throughout the embassy. And so I think that was a record high. And I think doing an internship at the US Embassy, working for the State Department or USAID or any other agency in the embassy is a great way to develop your interpersonal skills, gain some really early professional experience, and it always looks good on your CV.
Very nice. So what qualities are you looking for when you accept interns at the different organizations and agencies within the U.S. Embassy?
Well, we're looking for people with language skills. We're looking for people who are interested in learning. We're looking for people that have maybe some experience, but also are really looking to gain more experience. We're looking for people that are innovative and creative. But because we have openings in so many areas, we're also looking for a diverse range of people coming from a diverse range of places, right? We want that diversity we've been talking about, that Indonesian diversity, to show up in our intern pool too. So I highly encourage, if you have an interest, I highly encourage you to apply.
Okay, I would like to ask to Jake, can you share the values between American and Indonesian cultures such as diversity, inclusivity, and innovation?
Sure. To your point on diversity, I think as was previously mentioned before, both countries are really a melting pot. I mean, both Indonesia and America have countless people from different backgrounds from all walks of life. And so I'm really happy to see that both countries, both America and Indonesia, celebrate those. In our office, we always have people from different backgrounds bring in oleh-oleh kalau mereka pulang kampung for a special event or a holiday. And so we get to celebrate each other's different backgrounds in the simplest ways, but the most meaningful ways too.
Oleh-oleh apa yang kamu suka?
I just got back from Bandung last weekend, and I brought back rangginan, my favorite kerupuk. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Okay. How about you, Amy? Maybe you can share some common values between Indonesian and American cultures.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what comes to mind right after diversity is democracy. You know, we have the second and third largest democracies in the world together. We understand that democracy is also a work that we have to also be committed to. And I think that inclusion is an important part of Indonesian culture. I think about that unity in diversity is both a value that Indonesians and Americans share. And that means we're not just diverse, but there is something that brings us together too. You know, in America, I always consider myself like an Asian American, and that hyphen is really important. I can represent both like my individuality and also my larger identity within the US. And I think Indonesians too are that way. When I speak to Indonesians, often they'll say, well, I'm Indonesian, I'm Balinese, I'm Indonesian, I'm Batak. You know, there's a real unity and diversity. So I think that that's something that we naturally share.
So we'd like to ask you, how can we embrace these values further in daily life?
So you know what really, I love this question so much because I think it's so much about knowing your story and owning your story and then having the space to tell it. So when I was growing up, I was having this conversation with Jake before we had this podcast. I always felt like I was a little bit too American in an Asian context and a little bit too Asian in an American context, and it really was difficult for me to understand how I could be both. And as I've gotten older, I really can value that I am both, and I can make space for both parts of that identity in me. But I also can see that in other people as I get older. So, you know, in the US, we have this really exciting moment where there's an influx of Asian American artists and Asian American actors, all Asian cast, which in Indonesia is not very exciting, but in the US, it's a really important moment because Asian storytellers are coming onto the mainstream and telling the story. And even in Indonesia, I think about like Ade Putri, who is a culinary storyteller, bringing Indonesia's story to the world, or Ray Adriancia from Locavor, who runs this amazing restaurant chain, and he's also telling a part of his own story and Indonesia's story to the world. So I think that this is, you know, it's hard sometimes to be able to know your story and tell it and have that bravery, but it's also really valuable because then everybody can learn from you and what you bring to the experience. So that's what I think. Yeah. I think
so it's
really
great
exciting.
to see like more Asian representation right now in the pop cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you usually in the United States the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders Heritage Month is celebrated?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a new celebration. You know, I'll say growing up, I don't remember it.
Yes.
So it's something that we're also learning to do.
Yes.
This is my first time having a podcast like this as an example. But I think it's doing two things. One, it sometimes can be just sharing food and culture and these kind of more maybe fun or accessible elements. But another part of it is also telling more challenging stories, right? Telling stories about the immigrant experience, which can be difficult sometimes to go to a place where you don't know anybody and you don't know the language and learn. But I think that telling the kind of fun stories and telling the stories where we have growth are really important so that we can all understand the perspective of other people, which is, I think, a big motivation for being here today.
Yes, and I will go to Jack. How can we further embrace these common values between the two countries?
Sure, and I completely agree with what Amy said. That common shared understanding about the Asian American identity is crucial. And like you mentioned, Amy, it's really nice to see there's a greater amount of Asian representation now in pop culture in America. Speaking for myself as an Asian American, it was growing up a bit of a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, do you experience what Amy experienced?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we did. And there was that sense of kind of sometimes confusion or imbalance about who I was. And as I got older, I learned to totally embrace the fact that I am Asian American, I am proud. And talking at events like this, at this podcast, for example, is a great opportunity to just share what it means to be an Asian American and to celebrate those unique facets of American culture.
Yes, and now I would like to invite all of our audience listening to this podcast through our social media or through our sharing platform account. Please, you can ask questions and interact and have discussions with us today. Please scan the barcode available on the screen. And we are looking forward to your questions. We have Amy here as well as Jake to answer your questions. We have Muhammad Jalunur here. Okay. Apakah mahasiswa selain bahasa Inggris bisa berusaha untuk belajar ke luar negeri? Okay, so we have questions from Muhammad Jalunur. Are students other than those majoring in English can pursue study opportunity abroad?
Absolutely.
In the US,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. I think that we welcome all study, people from all backgrounds in terms of studying, not just people that are studying English. English is important to have or to want to develop if you're in the U.S. since it's the medium of instruction. But absolutely, if you have something you want to pursue, there's a place for you to pursue it in the U.S. The U.S. has a very diverse educational environment as well.
Iya, jadi bisa nggak cuma untuk yang jurusan bahasa Inggris aja ya. Jake, do you have something to add for this questions?
Totally agree with what Amy said. I've met people who have done beasiswa abroad in the States, majoring in psychology, neurology, and marine biology. So all different sorts of educational fields.
Yes, and I think right now because of the scholarships provided by the government of Indonesia and more Indonesian students are now studying in the US. We have seen them studying in Harvard and the Ivy League as well. It's very good development between the two countries, right? We have more diaspora in the United States, Indonesian diaspora. And we have the second questions, and this comes from Hai Ratu Zahra. The question is, how can we promote awareness and understanding of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders cultures and contributions? I think this has been mentioned. Maybe you would like to highlight some of the key points again, Jake.
Sure. I think one great way is to speak at podcasts like this and to be active in celebrating this month. And just as I mentioned before, sharing what it means for you personally to be an Asian American.
Yeah, and Amy?
Yeah, I think that if I was a young person thinking about how I could contribute, I mean, you can get programs like this together. You can have a podcast. You can have a movie viewing. You can just ask people their story. I think that it also can just come down to just hearing and listening from other people's perspective.
Yes, and also at America, we have a lot of programs like with different topics that can help connect and also foster good relations between the two countries. And now we will go to we have at this moment 20 questions on the list.
We'll do our best.
Let's go one by one. Maybe one question will be answered by Jake, another one by Amy. Okay, just so we can address all the questions. And the third question is from Hapsari Ambar Arum. What are the ways of cooperation between Indonesia and America in terms of education and student exchanges?
Yes, so what we've already mentioned, so we have a very robust relationship. There's lots of MOUs between US and Indonesian universities where you can do a hybrid program. There's also, as you mentioned, Indonesian government scholarships, US government scholarships, and then US universities that offer either scholarships or things like research assistantships. So I think the depth of the cooperation is pretty endless. There's endless opportunity for further cooperation.
Okay, and the fifth question is from Chacha. What are the biggest challenges facing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in the United States?
Sure, I can try to take a stab at that one. I think as we previously touched on before, I think underrepresentation is an issue, but I think that's quickly being rectified, especially nowadays with the emergence of greater Asian American representation in American pop culture. So that's why, at events like this and celebrating a month for Asian Americans and Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders is so crucial.
Okay. Wow, we have lots and very interesting questions. This one, I think we should ask both to Jake and Amy. Huwaida Xiaoki La Biba ask, cultural differences usually occur when we adapt to a new environment. Have you ever experienced culture shock while you are in Indonesia? I mean,
Oh yeah. I can answer this question. No, because remember when I only learned 5 words of Indonesian, the only other word I didn't know yet was nanti. I just didn't know what that meant, which Indonesians say a lot. So Americans can be very ready to get things done very quickly, but in Indonesia, patience is really important, flexibility is really important, and often somebody will tell you nanti to just, like.
yeah, we love to say this nanti, and then ngopi dulu.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call it shock, but it was certainly an adaptation that I had to learn. Is you have to just be a little bit patient, be a little bit flexible, and wait until things are ready.
Yes. Any culture shock story from you, Jake?
Yeah, I would say that having worked in America for several years before moving here, making that shift from kind of more direct communication to reading body language, listening to the tone of voice, those kinds of indirect communication styles, that's very crucial here in Indonesia.
Iya, membaca apa yang tidak terucapkan,
Yeah,
right?
benar,
It's
benar
pretty
sekali.
hard because we're not direct and we're not forward, and we tend to keep things to ourselves and expect others to understand. I think that's how we usually communicate in Indonesia. And one of them is asking you, have you ever tried to take any public transportation, especially during working hours or during
We had this conversation. I take the MRT every day. I
And-
love it. It's fantastic.
and other public transportations?
That's all
that
I've
you
taken.
ever-
Well, yes, public transportation, that's all I've taken. I've never taken the bus, but I've taken the MRT only.
The MRT one. How about
Yes.
you, Jake?
MRT, sometimes after car-free day, and then I will also take the whoosh train from here to Bandung if I go visit
Have you
family.
tried
No, I haven't
Whoosh?
yet. I haven't yet.
Very fast, 45 minutes to Bandung. Very nice,
fast,
right?
Yes, yes, it's very nice.
Have you take ojek online or ojek pangkalan?
Object, is that just the motorcycle?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I use that every day. Yeah, pretty much.
I have not yet.
Okay then. Now we will have the questions from Amelia Putri Hidayah. Have you ever had a best experience in Indonesia? What was that?
Why don't you go
Best
first?
experience. Yeah, you have to pick
To
from
think.
those.
The best
Many
experience?
experiences, yes.
I went to a friend's wedding recently, and just how festive it was, and how much fun everyone had, and how much positivity there was in that room was just incredible. Seeing people from my friend's extended family going all the way across Sumatra, Java, come for his wedding was just incredible, and they all lined up to shake his hand, and then they got to go eat, and he had to stay up there and smile and shake everybody's hand.
Standing there for hours.
Yes. Yes.
And how about you, Amy?
My best experience. So I told you my husband came here when he was just out of high school, and he stayed with a family, and he's been connected with them for 30 years. And so the best experience is Nene. She cooked for us. She's passed away now, but she taught me how to make satay, and we would have these big family dinners. Outside, everybody's there eating satay and rice and talking. And I mean, I don't think there's anything better than that.
Yeah.
In
Have you
Indonesia.
tried different satay in Indonesia, like sate Padang, sate
Yes.
Taichan,
Yes,
sate ayam regular one with peanut sauce?
yes, I've tried them all.
Very nice. And let's catch up. How about you? Oh, you have told me. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
Because I was like rushing to get all the questions responded by our speakers. And now Raden is asking you to give him tips and trick how to be a vice consul and a financial management officer. Professional question.
Professional questions. Well, I think that to get into any kind of work with diplomacy, you have to have some experience. So my best advice is to go seek out opportunities where you have to learn how to see how other people think and operate. Put yourself in situations where you're the outsider and you have to learn. Like thinking about you coming to Indonesia and being at Deloitte, that must have been great, but it must have been really challenging. So putting yourself in situations right now where you have to challenge yourself. Look, learning a new language is really hard, for example, but putting yourself in those kinds of situations is how you can develop those skills of adaptability and persistence, right? So I would say that's the tips and tricks. There's no shortcut, but certainly if, take the road less traveled.
Yes, no shortcut. Persistence matters, guys. And Jake? your tips as a professional?
Sure. I guess to be a financial management officer, I would recommend a jurusan in either accounting and or finance. But I would also say that on a deeper level, I would recommend you to always maintain an attitude of professional curiosity. Always be looking for opportunities to learn and develop. And like Amy said, put yourself in uncomfortable situations so you can develop as much as possible.
Okay, keep on learning. Okay, then let's ask these questions. I think it is being mentioned before in the podcast as I asked several questions, but let's hear more of this. The questions is from Septian Maulana. What is the most impressive culture in Indonesia?
Oh, this is
I'll let
difficult.
you. That's an easy question. I'll let you take that one.
I am biased, but I would say I love all Indonesian cultures, but one that I obviously personally connect a lot with is the Sundanese culture. I really like how it's very egalitarian. People refer to each other with very nice bahasa halus, which I really appreciate. So I'm still trying to learn bahasa Sunda again. If anybody knows, please teach me after this.
Okay. And now we will go to Jausa's question. If we want to study, to continue our studies in America, what are the cultural differences between Indonesia and America? Maybe this is in academic field. Yes.
This is a tricky question, yeah, because in the U.S., especially in an academic setting, curiosity, putting yourself forward, sometimes even challenging the teacher or challenging the status quo are really valued. Having having that kind of attitude of wanting to learn as much as you can, and these sometimes can be different in an Indonesian or even broadly Asian culture, where I have a funny example. When I was working in Bangkok, I had a student who went to the U.S. on an exchange program, and they were staying with a family. And they asked, the first night they had pizza for dinner, and they asked the person, like, how did you like dinner? And they're like, oh, I really like it. It's very good. And every single night for 3 months, they were served pizza for dinner because they didn't feel like they could say, I like it, but I like to eat other things too. So in the U.S., the Americans really value like honesty and being forthright. And in Indonesia, maybe that's, you really value people's feelings and that kind of social cohesion. So you have to learn how to balance that so you don't find yourself in a situation where you're eating pizza for 3 months straight.
How about you, Jake?
Yeah, I would echo what Amy said, for sure. Always be prepared to kind of speak your mind when you need to.
Yeah. For some Indonesians, we find it hard.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard,
It takes
yes.
practice. But everything takes practice.
Yes, that's right. And now I think this is still related to the field of education. Let's address this question. This comes from Kisti Nur Hafsa. So she asked, how do we maintain connections between Indonesia and the USA in the field of education? Maybe we would like to elaborate more on this since we have a lot of students coming here.
Yeah. What I think actually is the most exciting field is thinking about the kind of research and academic cooperation that's happening. So that's where I get really excited, because I think about the kind of global problems we have going forward. Climate change is one of them, but we're thinking about, biodiversity or coral reef or plastic issues. These are not just issues for one country. We actually can't solve them without cooperation. And so when I think about what I get really excited thinking about the generation coming up who's going to build those academic cooperation, universities working together to build capacity and to fix and address the solutions for the problems that they're so big we can't solve them alone. So on an individual basis, that means going for scholarships, that means, practicing and putting yourself out there, that means internships. But on a broader level, that means if you want to go into academia, thinking about how you can create these institutional connections so that we can solve our problems together.
Yeah, solving problems together. Jake?
Yeah, I will say that from a development perspective, USAID also does some work with LPDP, helping Indonesian students move it to the United States for scholarship programs. And that to me really stands out as a mark of commitment between the two countries in ensuring that there's an exchange of not only knowledge but also ideas for the future.
Okay. Now we will respond to Gibran's question. This is the 18th questions that we receive. What make it different when celebrating Heritage Month in today's generation? Is it relevant for the environment?
Maybe I don't understand the question.
Yeah. Mm, I don't know the environment here is like in the environment as in environmental or social environment. Maybe we can just say what makes it different right now when we celebrate Heritage Month in today's generation. Maybe we can address until that.
Well, maybe I'll speak to this. I think that when I was growing up, it wasn't something that we did celebrate, and I think by default there was a lot of assimilation that happened, which meant that for some Asian Americans, I'm one of them. We celebrated our own cultural values inside our home, but we didn't necessarily talk about them outside the home. So we almost had like two identities. But now I feel that there's a really wide embrace of people holding multiple identities at one time and being able to speak about them and show up, right, as your whole self at work, for example, or show up as your whole self at your university. So I think that this time is the absolutely appropriate time and environment to have this kind of heritage celebration, because so many of us, when I'm able to share my culture, I can invite Jake, and likewise he can invite me, and I'm hoping that this is also an invitation to other people to think about what rare gifts you have and what is unique and special about your story that might be something that you bring the world.
Yes, your take on this, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo exactly what Amy said. The only thing I'll add is that seeing that rise of greater Asian representation in America now, and that celebration of the Asian American identity is always heartwarming for me personally.
And now we have a question from Zulfa as well. How is the issue of diversity seen in the context of international relations, especially in diplomacy between countries?
So it's one of our core values at the State Department. It is part of the way that we assess how we're working as an organization. Making sure that we are attracting a diverse core member of our team, but also that we have the kind of policies that increase inclusion, that make sure everybody's voice is heard and everybody feels that they belong. But it's also shaping how we engage with other people. So we have, for example, a gender action plan at the U.S. Embassy. So we're looking at how we cultivate our relationships with Indonesians. So that we're cultivating relationships with women in the same number as with men, with minority groups. So that we are walking the walk, so to speak, and that we are diverse in our perspectives. Because at the end of the day, diversity is good for the way we do business. Diversity is another way of saying doing things well, because it means we have more people bringing their ideas and experience to the table to help us solve problems.
Yes, Jake.
No, exactly. I think increased diversity allows for more perspectives to be included when doing business and when figuring out new ideas or concepts. At USAID, diversity is an extremely important factor when we consider which organizations in Indonesia that we partner with to do our development work. So we're very active in ensuring that our local partners here in Indonesia are up to date and trained on what it means, what diversity means, and what inclusion means.
Okay. And there's this question from Sharifah Rani Guntar, but I think I'm going to paraphrase this one because she asked about worst experience. Of course, we don't want to recall that on this podcast. Maybe an experience that you find it is very different and you need to adapt more when you are here in Indonesia.
That's hard because I've had a broadly positive experience. I think that the only challenge, I came during COVID, and so when I first came to Indonesia, I wasn't actually, I felt like I was kind of living here, but I wasn't working with Indonesians. I was kind of, we were all virtual. It was very strange. So my only challenge, I think, was when I first came here, it was a very different place. So I learned how to kind of adapt to Jakarta, like, that's why I take the train,
Yes, yes. So because at that time we didn't really interact, right, during COVID, so maybe it didn't feel like so much different, like your experience
Well,
working
it's so,
in
you know, for
Indonesia?
me, the only way to understand a country is through its people. And so I found it really, really difficult during COVID not to be able to have coffee with people and chat and get their perspective, because that's how I feel like the only way to really understand a place is through its people. So my challenge was more about that strange COVID time for my first year here.
Yes, it's very strange, like coming to a new country and then, yeah, have to
Having
deal with COVID.
Zoom coffee,
Zoom.
very
Yeah,
strange.
yes, yes. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, like Amy, I've just had a very positive experience in Indonesia. I wouldn't say they're bad experiences, but just differences between life in America and life in Indonesia, and that's just the reality of it. And being a diplomat, part of that identity as a diplomat is to just be resilient and flexible and to go with the flow. So no matter where you are moving from or to, it's your job to adjust smoothly and be respectful.
So being American in in Indonesia, have you ever been like approached by children and then asked you to take picture or anything like that when you go somewhere?
Me, never. But I wonder though if it's just because I have colleagues that's happened to, and I'm wondering just because I'm half, maybe I can like kind of, I don't know. But that's never happened to me.
How about you, Jake?
Same here. Never happened to me before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Thank you very much for all the questions. I don't think we have covered all the questions being asked through the barcode, but I really appreciate the enthusiasms from our audience who gave us so many questions today. We are very delighted. Thank you so much for your active participation. And I think I'll give it back to Hasna.
All right. Thank you very much to our podcasters for today's very intriguing session. And thank you so much for sharing your unique experiences with us. Stay tuned to our upcoming events and our upcoming podcasts by visiting our website at www.atamerica.or.id, and also follow us on our social media platforms AT America. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And also, you can always rewatch our previous programs on our YouTube channel at AT America. With that, thank you so much again for joining us today. My name is Hasna. See you on the next podcast at America. Bye bye, everybody.